Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this virtual event. My name is Ann McGill, and I'm honored to be a part of this very important discussion. I am the evening anchor at Live 5 News, WCSC TV in Charleston, South Carolina. Live 5 News is a CBS affiliate, and during my time here at Live 5, I've had the opportunity to work with the Center for Heirs Property Preservation and to understand its critical work. So when my friends at the center asked me to moderate today's conversation, it was my honor. Today, we will be delving into the topic of heirs property, a leading cause of involuntary land loss for Black families and its impact on both communities and the fate of American forests. This event will showcase the power of partnership and tackling issues at the intersection of racial equity, environmental justice, as well as sustainability. Before we begin, I do want to share a quick bit of housekeeping. First of all, please know that you can submit questions via the Google form below the video player in your web browser. Our team behind the scenes will be monitoring your submissions throughout this discussion, and we will try to answer as many questions during the question and answer session for you today as possible. To get things started, I would like to welcome the CEO of the Center for Heirs Property Preservation, Jenny L. Stevens. Jenny has served as leader for the Center of Heirs Property Preservation since its inception in 2005, focusing on helping families protect and keep their family land, build generational wealth, and grow working landscapes. Jenny has worked for more than 25 years in the nonprofit field in such positions as fiscal director at a community action agency, sponsored programs director at a historically Black college, and senior program director at Coastal Community Foundation. Jenny, can you tell us about the initiative launching today and how and why the center is involved?
Good morning, Ann, and good morning, everyone. And we can't thank you enough for agreeing to moderate today's event. The Center for Heirs Property Preservation has been providing education and direct legal services to heirs property owners and historically underserved landowners since its inception in 2005. Heirs property is a form of land ownership that was passed down without a will, so it became owned in common by the multiple family members. This is an unstable and risky way to own land. Heirs property has been cited as one of the major reasons that African Americans have lost land. So let me tell you a little bit about what heirs property owners cannot do. They cannot obtain a mortgage. They have limited access to USDA cost share programs for conservation practices on their land. They have limited access to state and federal housing rehabilitation funds, and they have difficulty accessing FEMA funds after natural disasters. Oftentimes, our landowners see their heirs' property as a liability rather than the asset the land should be. Property matters to people. It's far more than just a parcel of land. It can be a window to the past that tells the story of a family, a community, or a way of life. The loss of heirs property has impact on the community, not just one family. Over several years, the center staff has received inquiries from individuals across the US whom we could not help because their land was not located in South Carolina. We felt we must figure out a way to help these families. So our idea was to replicate our successful service delivery model by partnering with trusted community-based organizations in other states that could provide direct legal services in addition to education and outreach. The center's service delivery model consists of preventing the loss and growth of heirs property, resolving title issues to the land, and helping families begin forestry enterprises from which they could build generational wealth while benefiting the environment. The Center for Heirs Property Preservation's leadership was contemplating, where should we go? Because at the heart of the center's work is the building of trust and the rural African American communities where distrust and fear of authority and the legal system is still pervasive. Once trust is established, these communities are open to receiving the education and services that the center provides. Fortuitously, the Center for Heirs Property Preservation, the Mississippi Center for Justice, Kimberly-Clark, and World Wildlife Fund stumbled upon each other and saw the alignment in our work and felt that through partnership, we could all achieve our goals.
Thank you very much, Jenny. That was an excellent overview of Ayers Property and its legacy, especially in the South, as well as the Center for Heirs Property Preservation's mission to address involuntary land loss. I think we're all interested in learning more about how your model will come to life in Mississippi, which is why I'm now pleased to introduce Vangela M. Wade to tell us more. Vangela is the president and CEO of the Mississippi Center for Justice, or MCJ, a public interest law firm focused on advancing racial and economic justice through an approach that combines legal services with policy advocacy, community education, and media outreach. Vangela began serving in this role in January 2020 after having several positions on the board of directors. Vangela joined MCJ after building a diverse and distinguished resume as a lawyer for more than 20 years, including a private legal practice focusing on heirship issues, wills and estates, as well as estate planning. Vangela, will you describe the work of the Mississippi Center for Justice and its role in this initiative?
Absolutely. First of all, good morning, Ann, and good morning, Jenny, as well as our audience. Thank you all for joining us. And as you noted in your introduction, I have worked in heirs with heirs property issues for many years, but actually my interest in the subject matter goes back even farther than my legal career. You see, I grew up on my grandparents' farm in North Mississippi, Lee County to be specific. My grandfather saved whatever he could to buy land. The importance of a family's ownership of land and protecting that legacy over the course of generations is something that was instilled in me at a very young age. The Mississippi Center for Justice's interest and work with heirs property began in 2006, working with hundreds of families and individuals in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. To restore their storm-damaged properties, Mississippi landowners had to establish ownership of their land, even homes that they lived in for 20, 30 years, in order to gain access to the resources needed. MCJ stepped in to provide that service, that legal service. While undertaking this work, we realized that we were filling a void in the state for low-income families who were unable to protect their interests, their ownership interest in their land or in their property, or to use it to establish an economic foundation for building family wealth. They were unable to do this without being able to afford direct legal services, direct legal assistance. So since Katrina, MCJ has continued to provide and advise people on their options as to the heirs property issues. And we assist Mississippians with clearing title arising from those heirs property issues, enabling the landowners to retain the land and to take full advantage of the benefits of land ownership, including maximizing their land's value for generational use and wealth. So that's why when Jenny approached me about the Mobile Basin project, I was extremely interested, particularly given the potential benefits it could provide Black landowners and low-income landowners in Mississippi. You know, in Mississippi, underserved groups, primarily Black families, have involuntarily lost hundreds of thousands of acres of land because of discriminatory legal and extra-legal actions carried on over the course of many years. by implementing the Center for Heirs Property Preservation's tried and tested model to address these heirs property issues in the Mobile Basin area, encompassing all the parts of about 49 Mississippi counties, MCJ will increase our capacity to assist socially disadvantaged and underrepresented low-income families to protect their land and generational legacies. So in addition to providing legal assistance to families so that families can establish ownership of their property, MCJ will work to educate communities in this targeted area to explain exactly what this heirs property phenomenon is and what the quagmire can become if property is not passed down through proper estate, taking proper estate planning measures such as wills or deeds that are recorded properly in our land records here in the county where the land is located. So by maximizing their land's value, socially disadvantaged Mississippi families can be empowered to stabilize and strengthen their communities and to use their land to create a legacy for generations to come. So, and MCJ's goal is simple. We want to help heirs property owners keep, protect, and utilize their land for generations to come.
Thank you very much, Vangela. Now we're going to pause the discussion here to share a video featuring the Robbins family, siblings, and the Mississippi landowners who have been directly impacted by heirs property issues. We will also see in this video Mr. Frank Taylor of the Winston County Self-Help Cooperative. That's an organization dedicated to helping families like the Robbins siblings to maintain their land. Let's hear what they have to say.
If you got land, you had it made. You could make everything else, but you couldn't make no more land. You can go out and buy a car, you tear it up, they could make another car. But if you got land, you hold on to it. You don't get rid of it, because there's something they can't make no more.
19 of our brothers and sisters and I was born on this land in Winston County, Mississippi. And we were happy. We had 3 meals a day because on a farm, you never run out of food.
I also remember and had friends that lived on, that were sharecroppers, you know, and that way it taught me the importance of having your own, because they were working someone else's land and not owning any land. And I was fortunate enough to be married in this church where my father had donated the land to build this church.
And I was fortunate to be married in the home place.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The USDA had monies that you could use to rehab your farm, and we had timber on it, so timber was the thing that we thought about that we could sell and then refurbish with timber, because we know how important timber and the trees are to our livelihood. And we find out that there was 1 acre that this young man has put his name on as an heir to the property. So I don't understand how someone can come in and go to the tax assessor's office and put their name on somebody's property, but he went in and he was able to do it. So it has caused problems for families, you know, such as ours, that we can't do what we want to with the property that we own. I have 3 grandkids. He has 3 grandkids. She has 3 grandchildren, and we want it there for them, you know. So it's keeping us from moving forward with what we plan to do for our future generations.
The most important thing is that when you own land, you have a place and what we call a placehold here in the United States of America. Ownership means something. Ownership creates value. Ownership creates great community, and ownership creates stability. Personally, in my family, I had an uncle in 1974 lost 100 prime acres of land due to Ayers property, and they sold it to the highest bidder. And I joined the Winston County Self-Help Cooperative, and that's what we've been doing as an organization over the years, is to help individuals to work through the maze of these kind of issues, because it impacts African American families more so than the mainstream families. So partnering with the Mississippi Center for Justice, which have interest in serving individuals who lack of financial need in order for them to bring resolve. So joining with MCJ, man, this is super. This is something that we needed.
Today we met Angela Wade of the Mississippi Center for Justice, and we talked to her about considering taking our case to get this 1 acre resolved on our air property.
We never had no intention of selling the land.
No. Because it has value, and it will have value for my future generations, you know. They can also harvest the timber off the land and then replant it for their next generation because it has value. So no, you don't sell your land. You hold on to your land.
I want to thank the Robbins family and Mr. Taylor for allowing us to share their story. It certainly provides a personal, profound perspective of Heirs property issues in Mississippi. To continue our program, I'd like to now introduce Carrie Cesario with World Wildlife Fund and Lisa Morden with Kimberly-Clark. Carrie is Senior Vice President for Forest, where she leads a portfolio of strategic initiatives in support and pursuit of WWF's goal to conserve the world's most important forest. As Vice President of Safety, Sustainability, and Occupational Health at Kimberly-Clark, Lisa sits at the intersection of sustainability and the supply chain for the global manufacturer whose essential products include Huggies, Kleenex, Kotex, and Cottonelle. Let's begin with Carrie.
Thank you so much, Anne. It's such a privilege to be here with the centers and Kimberly-Clark for this compelling discussion and the official launch of the pilot program in Mississippi. WWF has a deep understanding of the conservation challenges facing forest owners and is dedicated to rights-based approaches. We've worked to support local communities around the world to secure legal titles and realize their visions for nature-based income and opportunity. For example, WWF has partnered with local communities in Zambia and Peru to secure traditional land rights. We've also worked with women in the Democratic Republic of the Congo to gain, for the first time in that country, the legal right to manage their own land. While issues of land tenure have been more prominent in conservation efforts in other parts of the world, they've received less attention in the US. By supporting this initiative, we hope to draw awareness to the prevalence and long history of heirs property ownership and its impact on the environment and human well-being. We've been working with Kimberly-Clark on forest conservation for over a decade. 3 years ago, we started researching how we could help keep forests standing in the Mobile Bay Basin, which is one of the most biodiverse wood-producing regions in the country. That same region is projected to lose as much as 23 million acres of forests by 2060, in large part due to rapid and unsustainable development. In that research, it became clear that the long-term resilience of local forests and communities could not be separated from the legacy of heirs property. So we are honored to partner with Kimberly-Clark to support the pilot announced today by the Center for Heirs Property Preservation and the Mississippi Center for Justice. We have to prevent the exploitation of families and their land if we want to prevent forest fragmentation and loss in this country and mitigate the worst effects of climate change. Forests are an important source of health and wealth, but the burdens and benefits of caring for forests have not been shared fairly. And Ayers property owners are more likely to bear the brunt of nature loss and climate impacts. We need to do everything we can to address this legacy of injustice and support people who have, for generations, helped all of us by caring for forests. And so I'm excited to be here and have the opportunity to work with Jenny and Angela and their organizations.
All right, Carrie, thank you very much for those thoughtful insights. And now I'd like to turn to Lisa Morton with Kimberly-Clark.
Thank you so much, Anne, and thank you to everyone who's joining in the event today. Like Carrie, we are incredibly honored to be here for today's announcement and to support this incredibly important initiative in Mississippi. The Center for Heirs Property Preservation and the Mississippi Center for Justice are leading vital work in communities across the U.S. Southeast, including near two of the communities where Kimberly-Clark has operations, in Mobile, Alabama, and Corinth, Mississippi. Care underpins everything that we do at Kimberly-Clark, and supporting heirs property owners certainly aligns with our values in this regard. But in addition, the southern U.S. forests that Kimberly-Clark relies on to make our essential products are being lost to unsustainable development at an increasing rate that we know that heirs property can be particularly vulnerable to. So helping these property owners secure clear title to their ancestral land enables them to protect and care for and benefit from that land, while also enabling the responsible forest management and climate goals of those who may source from them. So it is truly a privilege to support this important work with all of those social and environmental benefits that it will create. We also know, of course, that the issue of insecure land tenure and its links to forest loss and degradation is not unique to the landowners in Mississippi. And while our initial investment in the pilot with the centers is focused on helping property owners in the Mobile Bay Basin, we hope that the learnings can ultimately be applied to future programs in the US and even around the world. Finally, the partnership with the centers and WWF directly supports our global sustainability ambitions to make lives better with the smallest environmental footprint, and is certainly part of how we as a company deliver our purpose to create better care for a better world. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today, and back over to you, Anne.
All right, thank you very much, Lisa. Now, we've come to the question and answer portion of the program, and I know that many of you have submitted questions via the Google form below the video player in your web browser. We will try to answer as many of your questions as possible as time allows. We are going to begin right now with a question for Jenny. Let me go ahead and pull up that format. Jenny, the question for you is, it comes from Stephanie, and the question is, what is the connection between heirs property and forests?
Well, and many tracts of heirs property contain forested acreage. The problems associated with this type of land ownership, as I discussed earlier, has a direct effect on whether these forests are preserved and utilized by the family, lost, or simply fractionalized. Resolving title issues, creating succession or estate plans, and educating owners on the benefits associated with sustainable forestry and cost share programs can turn what once was a liability into a valuable resource. Oftentimes, the potential sustainable forestry management income can provide motivation to families needing to resolve heirs property. That is, it becomes the carrot that helps them move forward. Forestry is a way to stem land loss and to increase individual and community wealth. Prime example, the U.S. Endowment for Forestry and Communities, and now the American Forest Foundation, believe this fact, and they created the Sustainable Forestry African American Land Retention Program. A lot of words. And this program was designed to help these landowners use sustainable forestry as the tool to maintain ownership of their land while generating income from it. This program has proven that supporting community-based organizations to help families resolve their title issues and create forestry enterprises is a way to build generational wealth and prevent the loss of land. And as a matter of fact, one of the reports commissioned by the endowment proved that there was a difference of almost $1,000 between the value of land and timber without cleared title for pine plantation forest land versus value of land and timber with cleared title. So it makes a difference if families have cleared title, they can receive more benefit from their land.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Our next question is for Vangela, and this question comes from Debbie. The question for you, Vangela, is, does this 2-year program come with requirements for the heirs once they do secure the land rights to their property? What does this pilot entail?
Thank you so much for that question, Ann and Debbie. Well, for MCJ's purpose in this project is to help dismantle the barriers that have historically impeded underserved groups, underserved landowners that were socially disadvantaged, including farmers, faced when attempting to access available resources, whether it was through the USDA or other resources, even, of course, as we mentioned earlier, resources needed after devastation from a disaster such as Katrina. This project aims to increase public understanding by Mississippi landowners in the Mobile Basin area about heirs property, what it is, how to prevent it, what are the options, how to resolve land title issues that are what we call clouded by heirs property issues. We are going to work with those families and individuals to provide direct legal assistance and education around this issue to help resolve those title issues for qualifying families. And so once we are moved through the legal process and we complete that representation, then those families are able to utilize that land in any way that they deem necessary or appropriate for that particular group of family members.
Okay, Vangela, thank you very much. Our next question is going to be for Jenny. Jenny, this question is coming from Bonnie. And the question is, how did the heirs property system get started in the South? And how much land is under heirs property ownership?
Thanks, Bonnie. Those are all great questions. The problem is that is the problem, that people do not know how much heirs property there is. There have been, or researchers have looked at the data to figure that out, but there is no clear way to identify what is heirs property by looking at property records. Heirs property has thought to have arisen after emancipation when freed African Americans were able to obtain land, but they either didn't have access to the legal system or they didn't trust the legal system that existed, and therefore they developed their own way of passing down land. And it was through an oral, O-R-A-L, method rather than putting in writing. But we know that if it's not in writing, then it's not valid.
Very good point, Jenny. Thank you very much. Next question is going to be for Vangela. It comes from Alicia. Vangela, the question is there a statute of limitations to establishing rights to heirs property in Mississippi?
That's a great question, and thank you, Alicia. As far as I know, and of course I've not had a chance to glance at my statutes this morning, but as far as I know, there's no statute of limitation for establishing your ownership to property, land property in Mississippi. What may occur though is if if someone's sitting on your land, your family's land for who not a family member, but sitting on that land for over 10 years in Mississippi, that could lead to what we call adverse possession. So while there may not be a statute of limitation for securing your interest or your rights to this heirs property, if you don't move swiftly, if families don't take action necessary to one, determine the heirs with interest in this property, but also to move through the legal process, you could lose those land rights either through adverse possession and potentially even the property being sold in tax sales. So if the property taxes aren't paid timely, then through a course of 2 or 3 years, families could lose their interest in that land because they would lose the land to someone who buys it at a tax sale. So there are so many pitfalls that families face, but the surefire way of getting information, accurate information, is to seek legal assistance, and that is what we will offer and do offer at MCJ is legal assistance, not just education about what heirs property is, but legal assistance, technical assistance to help families move beyond those heirs property challenges and what I call out of the heirs property quagmire, so that they can utilize this property in a way that they need to, and more importantly, to clarify who is in fact an heir, who has an interest in this property, to be able to make decisions about the property. Thank you.
Such great points, Vangela. It is so unfortunate that families will lose such pristine properties simply because no one has been paying the property taxes on that land. Such a very sad situation for some families. Moving on to our next question now. This question is for Jenny. Jenny, this question comes from John. And this question is, the properties being discussed today are in rural areas. Are you involved in heirs property in urban areas? And what issues do you face in these areas?
So thanks for the question, John. Actually, when the Center for Heirs Property Preservation first began, our major client was someone who lived within city limits or in the urban area, and they were in need of housing repairs. Therefore, usually the size of the parcel is smaller, but this person is often driven, as I said earlier, to receive housing repairs. So no, we're not, heirs property is not just restricted to a rural area. As a matter of fact, the Pew Charitable Trust had looked at the city of Philadelphia and how much heirs property there was located within the city. So to reiterate, heirs property is not just a rural issue.
All right, thank you, Jenny. Our next question is coming for Carrie and Lisa. This question is coming from Ahmed, and the question is, what are the roles of WWF and Kimberly-Clark in this initiative?
I can start. Thanks, Anne, and thanks for that question. The role of WWF is to amplify the stories and the priorities of the partner organizations and the landowners to really elevate this issue, bring it into the conversation about conservation, and to help facilitate greater support and financing for this effort. So over the course of the pilot, we will be looking to recruit additional partners and supporters, and certainly continuing the conversation with all of our corporate partners who source fiber or utilize water from the basin about the links to this issue related to their interest in keeping forests standing in the region.
And I can take it from there from the Kimberly-Clark side. And our role at Kimberly-Clark is really to be a funder of the initiative through our work with WWF. As I mentioned, it provides an opportunity for us to help progress our responsible fiber sourcing goals while also supporting those strong forest management practices throughout the Southeast, while of course creating positive impacts for families in the communities. In addition, we are going to use our global platform to amplify the messages and the incredible work of the centers, and to provide some educational information about the issues associated with both heirs property rights and the forest conservation challenges faced in the United States.
All right, thank you very much, Lisa and Carrie. Our next question is going to be for Vangela. This question comes from Amy. The question is, do you identify and approach heirs families proactively, or do you wait for them to approach you and ask for assistance in their land matters?
Well, Amy, I would say a little bit of both, in that we do provide educational outreach. We work with various community groups. We work with families who contact us through various outreach means to provide educational seminars specifically to their families. And of course, when people are encouraged to contact us either through our website or through our outreach sessions, and that way we can assist people where they need us. So at this point, we are doing a little bit of both. And if there are people who are, our partners, our in the audience today, who are listening to us and hearing this information, if you know of families with heirs property issues, please have them to contact MCJ. And you can contact us through our website at www.mscenterforjustice.org. And we have a landing page or a page there specifically devoted to our heirs property project.
All right, thank you very much, Vangela. Our next question is for Carrie. Carrie, this question is coming from Sarah, and the question is, how did this project come about?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. I liked Jenny's description of us fortuitously stumbling upon one another, because I think we really did luck out in finding the partners to take forward this vision. But at the way that we ended up in that space, that we were able to identify these partners, is that in the long history we've had working with Kimberly-Clark on forest conservation, we've constantly been looking at how to do better, how to do more, how to really be effective in saving the world's forests, saving both working forests as an important conservation tool. And about 3 years ago, in realization that market signals alone, market signals for responsible forest fiber coming from well-managed forests, that in and of itself was not going to keep forests on the landscape. There are just too many competing pressures that we were realizing. And so we wanted to look at one region to really dig in and see what would it take, what could make a difference in really maintaining forest cover. We looked at the Mobile Basin because of the importance from a biodiversity and forest conservation standpoint, and as Lisa has indicated, the relevance to their business. And we commissioned other organizations that we felt would shed some light and help us understand the issues. So the Conservation Fund, which has done a lot of work in the region, and Forum for the Future, which is an organization that helps to catalyze change from a systems approach, helped us analyze and understand and reach out to other stakeholders to understand what could have the biggest impact on from a forest conservation standpoint. And it became really clear that this issue was one that needed to be addressed. And so in the exploration of finding who the right partners were that we could explore whether we could contribute and make a difference, we fortunately came across the Center for Heirs Property Preservation and then the Mississippi Center for Justice.
All right, Carrie, thank you very much. And our next question is going to be, Carrie, for you as well as Lisa. And I think we can split this one into two, and maybe one of you can address one part of it and the other person can address the other issue. So the question comes from James. The question again is for both Lisa and Carrie. And the question is there a vision for carbon sequestration? I want to break that into two parts. So if one of you will tell us what is carbon sequestration, and then if the other person will address, is there a vision for this? So Carrie, since you just finished up, Lisa, would you like to begin in telling us what carbon sequestration is?
Yes, my pleasure, my pleasure. And, forests, as we increasingly know, there is increasing data sets that show clearly demonstrate the critical role that forests play in mitigating climate change. There's one role that they play in terms of how they absorb carbon from the atmosphere to build their woody biomass, their root system, et cetera. So as the world emits carbon, the one place, the most efficient technology that exists today is using trees and forest land and other ecosystems to absorb that carbon. So forests do play a critical role, and as we contemplate the responsible forest management and forest conservation in general, it truly is through the lens of families, of communities, but also through the lens of water protection, climate mitigation, and biodiversity protection as well.
All right, thank you very much, Lisa. And Carrie, you get to follow up on that question.
I'm not sure I can add much. Lisa did such an excellent job both describing the amazing carbon sucking potential of trees and forests, but also that link to strong communities and building resilience. So we know that in order for forests to play that role in climate mitigation and also in adaptation and providing the natural resource supports for communities to endure the changes that are already happening on the land. We've already talked a bit about natural disasters. In order for that to happen, forests need to be healthy and they need to be intact. So it's not just the loss of forest, but also maintaining the connectivity, forest health, and there is a lot of opportunity through extension and building both understanding and the capacity and the direct support for forest management for those families that wish to engage in forestry, derive revenue from their lands. There's a great opportunity for compatibility in addressing climate change, adaptation and resilience, and being able to retain land and manage it for future generations. So definitely an important part of the project overall.
Carrie and Lisa, thank you both so much for your response to that question. Our next question will be addressed by both Jenny and Vangela. The next question when it comes to this issue that we're dealing with is, what gives you hope concerning this situation of Ayers property? What gives you hope?
Every day I get to put on my superhero cape and go to work and be a defender of justice by helping landowners hold onto their land and maximize its use. And this project will amplify that. So that is what brings me hope, that additional heirs property owners and historically underserved landowners will no longer be called underserved because they will be receiving services and maximizing the use of their land.
Thank you, Jenny. Vangela?
I totally agree, and with Jenny's vision, with her hope, and I would say for MCJ and the people that we know that we are tasked, that we are focused on serving, the hope is that we will be able to not only educate but advocate and uplift, providing legal technical services that will empower families, empower individuals to not only access this property, but use the property. And having that capacity, enlarging our capacity to do this work is what gives me hope in the future, in knowing, as Jenny says, that at some point, the people, the groups that we describe as underserved or socially disadvantaged, particularly as it comes to land ownership and access to resources for which they could use that land, that will no longer exist. So this is the beginning of that hope. So I look forward to the next 2 years and seeing just how strong we've all been in making change, particularly in Mississippi.
Thank you very much, Vangela and Jenny. We appreciate that. The next question is for Carrie and Lisa. It comes from Sebastian. The question is, why is this project focused on the Mobile Bay area of Mississippi? And are there plans to expand the geography? Lisa, would you like to start?
I sure would. Thank you, Anne, for the question. So the Mobile Bay area was relevant to our supply chain. We have some operations that are located in that vicinity, and even some of our supply chain, our suppliers source fiber from within that region. So it was important for us. However, we recognize that some of the work in this initiative, in this pilot, potentially could be expandable and could be extended to other parts of the U.S. Southeast or even beyond. So we really are excited to be participating, to see how the pilot progresses, and to take those learnings and potentially consider how to apply those in other areas in the Southeast and in the world.
Good to hear. Carrie?
Yeah, I would just add that this is an area that is very important from a conservation standpoint as well. And if we think about it from a biodiversity standpoint, from a standpoint of freshwater, it's really important to conserve this area. And so we do hope that we'll have an opportunity to expand beyond this initial pilot region, and we'll certainly be looking to do that. But the convergence of these issues made it really ideal for pilot testing.
All right, thank you very much, Carrie. Our next question is for Vangela. It comes from Aurora. The question is, please tell us more about MCJ's policy advocacy. Are there current bills in the works? And if so, what do they hope to accomplish?
Thank you, Aurora, for that question. I'll tell you, at this point, we're not working on any particular or specific policy issues related to Ayers property. Last year, we worked collaborated with other advocates in the state to help pass or push, promote and educate people about the Uniform Heirs Property Partition Act, to make sure that families with heirs property are not taken advantage of with regards to the legal process when looking to either partition the property by sale or in kind, which means to basically divide the property based on the numbers of heirs within that family. So that has been a great piece of legislation for Mississippi. One of the advantages or benefits of that particular law now is that the property if the property is to be sold, even amongst the heirs, it is based on the actual market, the market value of that property. Before this law was adopted or put into place this past year, the property could be sold upon the courthouse steps for the highest bidder, and based on the history of that process, that was always some question with regards to whether or not the amounts that were posted for bid were actually fair. So while we don't have anything in our sights right now, we will keep a watch. We will keep abreast of what is going on, and if there are ways to continue educating or look at policy development in this area to help protect our landowners, our heirs property owners, then you can believe that Mississippi Center for Justice will be upfront in that fight.
All right, Vangela, thank you very much. This last question is going to be posed to all of our panelists. And I think we will start with Lisa, Carrie, Jenny, and then we will go to Vangela for a final response on this question. This question comes from JFW, and the question is, what is the biggest challenge in getting this project off the ground, and how are you addressing those challenges? Lisa, let's start with you.
Sure. The project for us actually goes back several years, as Carrie mentioned, with some work that we were doing with WWF to think about the role that we collectively could play in advancing the world's forests and making positive contributions to the forests and the communities that are dependent upon them. So we've been tackling some of this challenge and doing the exploration work and the research to understand the role that we could play in making those positive contributions. So for us to through that research to discover the work that both centers have been leading and driving for so many years was really a fantastic melding of goals and strategies and objectives. So from our perspective, some of those biggest hurdles about how we can decide how to drive some systemic change in forests to enable them has been one of the hurdles, and we are absolutely thrilled to have discovered the work that both MCJ and the other centers have been driving, and how that can really create some of the systemic change to drive forest management in the future.
Very good. Carrie, your turn.
Great, thank you. I think one of the challenges is that we're trying to tackle multiple intractable issues, and considering racism, poverty, climate change, deforestation. At the same time, it gives me a great deal of hope, because the only way to tackle intractable issues is to take that systems approach, is to come together and consider how they relate to one another. So I think certainly the challenge just in terms of our hopes and dreams of what can be achieved over the long term, but I think we're up for that challenge. And so I'm just glad we're getting started, and I think we're off to a really great start.
Jenny, you're up next.
I would say communicate, communicate, communicate. Communication among partners, communication to the community, policy workers, corporations, etc. Literally, everyone needs to become evangelists for the issue of heirs property and resolving title and helping families maximize the use of their land.
And Vangela, you are next.
Absolutely. I would echo every response from my colleagues here this morning. I would say that in the midst of COVID, one of the challenges, of course, is getting out into the community coming in to see us. But we're going to manage that. We host events by Zoom, and we will begin to host in-person events, of course, under safety protocols. But other than making sure that we are, as Jenny just said, communicating out to the public so that people know what we're doing and know what's available through MCJ and our partners. We push through that, making sure that that we continue to educate our public and our stakeholders. I don't see the challenges being able to stand. So I look forward to us continuing to build these partnerships and to build the capacity to help families and individuals maintain and grow potential of their properties.
And with that, we will bring the question and answer session to a close right now. I want to thank all of the participants today for providing such wonderful information to help people understand this issue of heirs property, and now the goals that are in place and the initiatives that are going to be in place to help address them. We're going to have closing remarks right now. We're going to start with Jenny.
So thank you, Anne, first of all, for moderating this session for us. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. I want to point out before I close that heirs property is not just an African-American issue. And so our hopes is that we would continue to replicate our model in working with Native Americans or working in the Appalachian or working with in the colonial areas. But the point is, it's not just an African-American issue, and it's not just a rural issue. And heirs property impacts everyone, because once the land is lost, the community is impacted. So thank you again, and wish you all well.
And thank you, Jenny. I would, of course, when it comes to heirs property, this is heirs property issues. This is a passion. You can clearly see a passion of Jenny's and her life's work, as well as a passion of mine. And so I'm looking forward to continuing that partnership and working and implementing the Center for Heirs Property Preservation's model here in Mississippi in the Mobile Basin area. I would also add that while MCJ seeks to offer our services, we, based on the resources, we can only offer those services to families that have limited income resources and who cannot afford private legal assistance. And I would also add, just for the record, that we will also limit that representation to those who can agree on what they want to do, how they want to approach these heirs property issues. We will not be involved in any family disputes as to what is going on with the property or how to control the property. Our goal is to work with those families to secure that ownership interest on the land records, land rolls with the state of Mississippi, to give them access to various resources available, and to do that in a way where they're not faced with an economical barrier. So looking forward to doing that, looking forward to working in the Mobile Basin area in the coming months and years. Thank you all so much. Thanks everyone for being here with us today.
Thank you very much, Vangela. And we do want to thank all of our speakers and our panelists. This has certainly been a thought-provoking discussion, and we look forward to following the work of those centers as this pilot gets underway in Mississippi. Thanks to everyone who joined us virtually and who submitted questions. If you would like to learn more, or if you have additional questions for Jenny and Vangela, we will be posting the URLs for both centers here momentarily. Again, we want to thank you so much for joining us. Have a good afternoon, everyone.